Hi, it's Tish here and welcome back to my channel Auto Social UK. Today, though the weather isn't the best, I'm in one of my favourite places in the UK, that's the Peak District, and I'm here to test the new generation of Suzuki Swace. I've only got a very short amount of time, around an hour, but that's just as well, because the changes, well, that's a pretty short list as well. In today's video, I'm going to go through all of those changes, including an increase in power, to find out whether it's going to make the Suzuki Swace more appealing than ever before. So, if you want to find out all of that information, then please keep watching. And if you like new car reviews and car content, then go ahead and hit the subscribe button. I also want to say a massive thank you to anybody that has donated to my coffee fund. It really helps to keep this channel going. And if you do want to show your support, then you can do that by clicking the link down below. Every little helps. Okay, so let's start with those changes. So let's kick those changes off with the exterior styling. What has changed from the front of the Swace? Well, absolutely nothing really. This is actually exactly the same as it previously was. That's not necessarily a bad thing. I actually think this is quite a smart looking car, has quite a sharp face about it. And of course, I am going to mention it because I know you'll all be saying it down below. Yes, it is just a rebadged Corolla. But is that necessarily a bad thing when you get a pretty smart looking vehicle? My only niggle with the Swace is the colour combinations that it comes in. If you look at the rest of the Suzuki range, you've got some funky colours like a mustard yellow, you also have a baby blue, but the Swace, well, all the colours are a little bit boring. And the Corolla actually gets the option of having a matte grey, which looks really smart and makes it look quite a lot more appealing. It's a shame that the Suzuki Swace is much plainer in that department. However, I think most of the time when it comes to the people that are buying these cars as their company cars, the colours are not going to be that much of an issue. Plus, once you pick the specification of Corolla, which has the ash grey as a £630 option, in this case the GR Sport, even with the same power output, the Toyota is £3,000 more than the higher specification Swace. Now let's see what your knowledge of the Suzuki Swace is like. Guess what's changed around the back? I'll give you 3, 2, 1. Yeah, if you picked it out, you definitely cheated, but it's here. You've now got some chrome little indents in the rear lights. The gloss black rear diffuser also gets a similar smattering of chrome. Yes, it's very minimal, although it does help add a little bit to the car, I'm not complaining. It just really is a very small amount. Now inside the boot, here is my favourite thing about the Swace. Sure, the obvious thing would be to say that it has a really impressive amount of boot space, and whilst that is true, and I love the fact that it has a retractable parcel shelf, it also has a clever boot floor, which I love, and it's been really handy because it's been very muddy here in the Peak Districts. But this rear parcel shelf here can actually be flipped over, and then on the other side it's actually waterproof, which is great for when you're carrying muddy boots or if you've got a family who likes to be active. The one thing I'm slightly disappointed about is I would have liked to have seen the introduction of an electric boot. It just doesn't feel very premium. And whilst those changes to the exterior are minimal, most of the significant changes have come to the way it drives, and specifically the power output. It now has more power than ever before. But let me jump in the car and tell you all about it. I'm just about to get going and I've encountered my first problem, which is I cannot work out how to get the sat-nav on. There isn't any shortcut buttons. We've only got one for the volume, and then down the side we seem to have music, which is a radio station, Bluetooth, car, which shows you your trip info and your energy flow, settings, but I can't actually find sat-nav. Let's see if the voice command works. navigation.
Sorry, I'm having trouble understanding you.
Sat-nav.
Sorry, I'm having trouble understanding you.
I was pretty sure this was the Ultra version, which means that it gets, yep, Ultra, which means it should have sat-nav. Maybe it doesn't have sat-nav. Smart Link with Android Auto and wireless CarPlay. Well, looks like we're navigating on our own then. So what does it say here? At main entrance, stop, set trip. And turn left. Keep sharp right by church. Manual instructions. This could go very long. The Suzuki Swace has been around for a couple of years now. That time has moved very quickly. And in that time, they're still pretty rare to see. You're going to see a lot more Toyota Corollas than you are Suzuki Swaces. Although, Suzuki never expected this to be a big seller for them. They're quite happy with the numbers that they've been producing, which is around 2,000 for the UK. And they'd like to continue with similar numbers into the coming year. In that time, response from customers has been pretty good. One of the main complaints was around the power output. The previous generation of Swace had 122 brake horsepower, and for a car which is almost an estate, that isn't very much, and it did feel underpowered. This new generation, however, has had an increase of 15%, and that's brought it up to 140. That's much more competitive compared to some of its other rivals. The good news is, however, is despite the increase in power, CO2 is pretty much exactly the same. In fact, it's increased by just 1 gram, and that sits it way below most of its competitors. The Suzuki Swace is a strong hybrid, and what that means is though it doesn't have a battery which can be recharged by plugging into the mains, it will be recharged whilst you're driving, and the strong part means that it will drive in electric alone, though be it for a short amount of time. So what makes up that 140 brake horsepower? Well, 97 of that comes from the 1.8 litre petrol engine. The rest of the power comes from the electric motor, which has been increased from 53 kilowatts to 70 kilowatts. One thing that hasn't changed in the Swace is its light steering. And though it's nice for when you're driving around town, when you're on the back roads here in the Peak District, there isn't much feel through the steering wheel. It's very, very light. And even if you do pop it in sport mode, this doesn't increase that by much. And that means that some of the feel and connection to the car is lost. When it comes to practicality, it is a shame that the rear doors don't open particularly wide, especially compared to some SUV competitors like the Nissan Qashqai. But what is space like once you're inside? Once you're inside the back of the Suzuki Swace, I think that noise sums it up a little bit. It's just a little bit underwhelming. It's not bad, don't get me wrong, but it's deceptively small compared to the exterior. You'd think that it would have estate amounts of space, but it's a little bit cramped, especially in the headroom department. Legroom behind me as a driver is actually perfectly fine, and you've got a nice low central tunnel, so that's not an issue for middle seat passengers. But you already sit up quite high in the back, and when you move to the middle seat, you sit up even higher again. My head is nearly brushing on the ceiling. It's nice and comfortable, however. For two people, I don't think it would be an issue at all. And you do have a pull-out armrest with a couple of cup holders, but fit and finish is not absolutely perfect. But we have to remember, at this price point, it's pretty competitive. The standard specification in the Suzuki Swace remains pretty much unchanged, and that's a good thing because standard equipment is really impressive. In fact, when it comes to the entry-level motion car and this top spec Ultra, I think they're so close by the standard specification that it doesn't make much sense to upgrade to the Ultra car. But what do you get inside the Ultra? Well, pretty much anything you could want. You've got a heated seats, heated steering wheel, you've also got a heated front windscreen, adaptive cruise control, automatic lights, automatic wipers, automatic high beam assist. I've got keyless entry and start. I've also got a rear view camera, but I have a very small gripe with the rear view camera. I'd love if you had guide ropes with those so you could see which way you're turning the wheel. It's very small. But as a person that loves to have their wheels centre at all times, I like this because it helps me not have to get back in because my OCD won't let me walk away with wonky wheels. It's quite comfortable in this cabin as well. It's just a little bit dull. It's not particularly exciting. But then again, it's not trying to be exciting. It is trying to be just comfortable and efficient, and it ticks that box well. It's got good usability as well. You've got loads of steering wheel buttons. You've got all your buttons down here for things like your heated steering wheel and your automatic headlamps. You've also got buttons for your heated seats in the centre console, buttons for changing your drive mode, and physical climate control dials as well. So it's pretty much got everything you'd need, and it's all really easy to find and really easy to use. A nice addition to the specification list is it now has wireless Apple CarPlay. However, Android does still have to be wired. And I also love the fact that you now get a wireless charging pad as well, tucked down here. Plus, it has a little on-off switch, which I quite like, because I don't always like everything in that dash to be charging, because sometimes it can get a little bit warm, or if your phone's full, you don't necessarily need it. So I quite like the ability to turn it on and off. Now, if you do have a Suzuki Swace and you've been hunting around trying to work out where on earth is the USB-C slot, well, it's actually round here on the left-hand side of the centre console. You're welcome. The funny thing is actually a lot of the time when it comes to some of the niggles that other people find with cars like notchy gearboxes, I don't tend to have as many issues. And I'd argue that's because I drive quite gently.
Sure about that? You sure about that? That's why?
I'd like to think I drive how the majority of Suzuki Swace drivers do. And unlike other journalists that feel the need to throw these cars around the winding back roads, that's not how they're going to be driven. So arguing the fact that it's not a particularly engaging drive and that the steering is a little bit light, is that really relevant to the target audience of the Suzuki Swace? Let's face it, people buying a car like this or the Corolla will be looking for low company car tax, something which is going to do really well in fuel economy. And that's something that both cars are very good at doing. And most of the miles that these people are doing are going to be spent on the motorways, using that standard adaptive cruise control, enjoying the relaxing drive, the light steering. So actually, whilst I can highlight that yes, of course, this car does have its niggles, most of the time, those niggles aren't really going to be relevant to the target audience.